Hello, everybody. It is a sincere pleasure to greet you here. I am the Florida man, and I am also a Hexican, thank goodness. And I'm here today to talk to you guys about what's going on in the world, tie it all together for you, hopefully, open some eyes up. And so, there's two groups of people I think I most relate to in this world. One is certainly Christians, true Christians, and the other are the Hexicans. It's another group that I feel a deep, deep connection with. I feel like kind of like we're on our own little tribe here. So I figure I'd take my two favorite interests and bring them together and start up Hexicans for Christ, because my goal is to make every Hexican a Christian and make every Christian Hexican. I think both of them are in the same vein of freedom, one being financial freedom, and that's pretty important here in the material world, and certainly more important is our spiritual freedom. And so here I am, like it or not, and I'm hoping a lot of people will enjoy it. So this is episode 1. I'm all by myself here, and what we're going to talk about today is very current events. We're gonna go back a little bit in time. We're gonna bring it right up to today. What's happening? Why is it happening? And what should we be doing about it? Because it seems like doing nothing is sort of a path to destruction at this point. And I'm happy to point out that today is Saturday, November 20th, and I am in the great state of Florida. And anybody who loves freedom, this is where you need to be, guys. Okay, so come on down. All right, well, here we go. We're going to get started. Such an interesting photograph here, guys. I mean, you honestly can't make this stuff up. This is our friend Klaus Schwab. He's the head of the World Economic Forum. He also used to be the head of the Bilderberg Group. And he seems to be the point man for Satan in the current takedown of society. He's famous for a few things. He does suggest that we should be eating more bugs and less meat. He has proudly declared that we're going to own nothing and we're going to be happy about that. Of course, I'm sure he'll own something. He's basically Dr. Evil. And there he is in all his glory, if you want to call it that. But I show this here because this is our enemy, guys. Come on. Seriously. The only thing they have is that we just are so freaking passive. I mean, they can really do whatever they want like this. He happens to be born to Fred Schwab and Marianne Rothschild in Germany in 1938. Sure was a happy time for them. And, the point of me starting out with this sort of thing is I want to kind of walk you on the path that I took towards God. How I went from basically somebody who was a normie and sort of started out as an atheist and later on said I didn't know, I was an agnostic. And that led most of my life until a few years ago, maybe. And what led me to God and to Christ was the discovery of abject evil in this world. We were all told magic and demons and all that stuff was fake. Comes to find out there's some people who don't think it's so fake. And boy, for thousands of years, these people, different groups of people have agreed on one thing. And that is that if you sacrifice humans and do other sorts of witchcraft, you can receive information and you can receive power from demons. Okay? It's a dumb strategy because it's very short-sighted, I would call it. Because you have, if you're lucky, 100 years on Earth. Seems like a long time, but it's not. Versus eternity, right? And so they're playing the short game, unfortunately. So the quote here is, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. Charles Baudelaire. And I'm just going to do a quick check here, make sure audio looks good. So if you give me a second, guys, I appreciate that. Hello. All right, well, I don't know. Seems okay. We're going to keep moving. We're going to keep it going. Let's hope it works. All right, so there's Klaus Schwab. This guy's got to go. Okay, here's a familiar face. Interesting gestures by the two men standing next to him, with the hidden hand there. But he was a Rosicrucian after all, so we can't say he was perfect. But Abraham Lincoln knew something about this conspiracy against basically freedom and humanity, and he was referring to Rome, where that's the location of the Vatican, the Pope, and the Jesuits. And in a letter he wrote, I conceal what I know on that subject from the knowledge of the nation. For if the people knew the whole truth, this war would turn into a religious war. He's referring to the Civil War, the American Civil War. And it would at once take a tenfold more savage and bloody character. So he warned us that the events were being planned out of Rome. I'm not trying to say that Rome is the only group behind this, because they're certainly not. They're just probably the oldest and most established. But Satan has a foothold in all the groups, okay? Orthodox Christian, Anglican, Jewish, Protestant, secular things. I'm by no means saying that the only issue in the world are the people in Rome. I'm just saying they're probably the biggest and the baddest, all right? So Lincoln warned us, and he also, one thing that the controllers always use is money, media, and now medicine, interestingly. But money and media have been their go-tos for a long time, and Lincoln knew that, and he tried to have the United States print their own money. What a concept. We haven't printed our own money for very long in our history, to be honest with you. And the conclusion, folks, is this, okay? I'm gonna simplify it. Here's what I wish somebody would have told me on day one, and not have to figure this out. You were born into a holy war that no one ever told you about because you were under occupation by foreign forces. Point, the end, over with. You have the veneer of a free society, and that's going away. Well, it's probably gone now. Anyway, this war that's been waged against you for now over 400 years is called the Counter-Reformation. Okay? So write that down. And who was the point man for the Counter-Reformation? Well, it's our friend Ignatius of Loyola, a Spaniard and a Satanist. And he created the spiritual exercises, which basically put him and all of his followers in contact with the spirit world, where they could get their demonic inspirations from. Isn't that lovely? But don't worry, they're not the only ones. So there was an oath that all the Jesuits needed to take, and this is just a small excerpt. I don't want to hit you guys with too much data, guys. This is not complicated stuff, but there's important information that I'm not including here, but you could look up this quote. There's more. I do further promise and declare that I, when the opportunity arises, prepare and relentless war, secretly, and openly against all heretics, Protestants, and Masons. So basically anyone who's not listening to Rome at that time. As I have been commanded to do, to extirpate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will not spare neither age, sex, or condition. Yeah, they're killing our kids now. They're down to 5 years old. They'll get to newborns sooner or later until we stop them. All right? So he founded, folks. He founded the Society of Jesus in 1539, along with Peter Faber and Francis Xavier, for the express purpose of eliminating the Protestant Reformation. Okay, fine. So there it is, folks. 1539, war declared on Protestantism. And basically anybody who doesn't say that the Pope in Rome is your king, and you're going to do whatever the hell he says, whether it makes sense or not, you're going to worship the way he tells you to worship, and you're going to do pretty much everything they tell you. Okay? That's the offer. Either get down on your knees and you just be a slave to Satan, or you stand up and tell these losers to go back where they came from and where they're headed. So that's our buddy, Mr. Loyola. Okay, so they had to start a war. They declared war against Protestantism. So we should learn a little bit about its history and why is it so important and how is it relevant up to the moment. So essentially, the Protestant Reformation freed Europe for thousands of years, and probably, it goes back far beyond that and go into Babylon, into Egypt. People haven't been free for a very long time on this planet. Okay. And so it freed Europe from religious persecution, serfdom, and illiteracy imposed by the Pope. So here are some important events, folks. Let's listen up. 1383, John Wycliffe makes the first English translation of the Bible. Before this, the people were not allowed to learn how to read, and it was expected that the priest basically told you what you needed to know about the Bible, and they lied. All right. 1440, Johannes Gutenberg invents the printing press. Before this, obviously, every book, and in this case, the book we're concerned here with is the Bible, had to be written by hand, and that took a long time. It was expensive. Mistakes could be made. So the printing press, it was huge. And of course, the first book they ever printed was the Bible. Now, people have got the Bible in their hands. They're starting to read what things are all about. They're comparing that with what they're seeing coming out of Rome, and they're getting fed up. So by 1517, Martin Luther famously posts his 95 theses at the All Saints Church. He also sent it to the local Roman official in a letter. And this was basically saying, you know what, you're charging us money to relieve sins. You're into all kinds of debauchery. There was all kinds of things. But the most important one was that people were not allowed to worship as their conscience dictated. They were forced to be following Rome. So after the talking ended in 1618, the 30 Years' War begins. And this is a very bloody and long war, as you could see that. But the Protestant forces defeated the Catholic Habsburgs and other groups and forced them to sign a treaty that said, number one, we got these freedoms like trials and things like that, I believe. But there's some parts of it related to their freedoms. And the more important part was they were supposed to be allowed to worship the religion that their conscience gave them. In this case, they wanted to follow the Bible. They didn't want to follow the church. They didn't want to follow a guru. They wanted the word of God. So after that happened, all that bloodshed, then the Pope later just said, we're not going to follow that anyway. And so people seeing that basically hope was lost, being that the world was not completely developed, there was still land that hadn't been settled by Westerners. And so word gets out that there's this thing called America, or whatever they were calling it, New World. And so these people said, hey, we've been being persecuted, enslaved. We had to fight a 30-year war. I'm sure they lost many, 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 many people. And really, the only thing these people want to do is get up in the morning and live their life according to their conscience. That's their giant crime. Okay. So they say, hey, you know what? We're not going to be able to take everything we have. We're going to have to start over in a wilderness that's inhabited by, natives, whatever you want to call it, that were not friendly in all times. Okay. Not all the tribes were nice. And so, they would rather go face that than live in Europe. All right. So they basically took their chances, headed west, and set up colonies, which eventually the King of England came in and said, oh, you're going to have to pay us this. You're going to have to pay us that. You can only buy products from England. You can't trade with anybody else. We're going to tax your stamps. We're going to tax your tea. We're going to tell you what currency you can use. The same BS, guys. Same BS they always wanted, okay? Which is why we're going to refuse them and put them in the fucking ground. Anywho, so they had to flee across, the Atlantic Ocean, start from scratch, and that's what they did. And things got going very well, and by that time, a few years later, the king sent over one of his little viceroys, and they started pushing us around, and you know what? We had been free now for a little bit, and we said, fuck, excuse me, guys. Very passionate here. And a Christian isn't a perfect person who never curses, okay? It's in your heart. So all these fake Christians who focus on these things that don't matter, I'm sick of you. Anywho, we get in 1776 the Declaration of Independence and another war, and we win again. And the United States of America creates a constitution, centerpiece of which is No more religious persecution. Okay, that means you Rome. And of course, they didn't like it. So 1776 till present, now that we had the proper conditions, we had some of the harnesses taken off of us. Obviously, what we did is legend. I mean, we created the greatest country that we know about. We weren't around for Rome. Rome didn't have all the technology we came up with. But in terms of like allowing human rights, prosperity, freedom of conscience, I mean, guys, it unleashed upon humanity just something so amazing, which that they've been hating it ever since, and they've been slowly chipping away at it, trying to get their little serfdom back in. All right, so that's the significance of the Protestant Reformation, folks. It is the central issue in our lives. We just don't know it. Alrighty, so then we talked about the Jesuits earlier. Now, the Jesuits were a military order that were on a war against Protestantism. And for some reason, the Vatican and them had an agreement that a Jesuit could never be Pope. But of course, we know that in 2013, something that just never happens, I think it was the first time in 500 years, that a Pope retired before death. They don't do that. These people lust after power. They spend their whole lives, conniving to get to the top of this rat hill. And trust me, he was pushed out by this guy, and in walks, what's probably the false prophet, right? And so if you look at this picture, I know a lot of you have seen it, maybe some of you haven't. This is like an auditorium in the Vatican. And if you see in the background, that's actually a snake's face. You got two eyes, you got the teeth. So this is the Vatican, guys. This is the fake Christianity capital. They never were Christian. These are sun worshippers, okay? And all of their symbology comes from Egypt. They're not Christian. They never were Christian. They basically just couldn't, back in the days of the Roman Empire and the Caesars and all that stuff, Christianity just kept growing and growing. And the more they persecuted and fed Christians to lions, the more converts they made. So Constantine got the bright idea, hey, you can't beat them, pretend to be them. And that's the Catholic Church, okay? And they don't hide it. And there's no debating this. This building needs to be emptied, demolished, and we need to get all their records out and have them for public display. And then this man needs to be hung. Okay. Evil loves to steal valor and cloak itself in goodness. It has infiltrated every institution worth having, including religion, media, banking, and technology. And I put a little hiss there. I said the Jesuits were forbidden from holding the office of Pope before this. For your snakes there. Okay, Catholics in action. That's one of the nicknames for the CIA. Okay. Also note that the Supreme Court is primarily Roman Catholic. Just pointing that one out there. All right, so this is William Colby, and he was quoted as saying, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." Okay, I think that's pretty straightforward. And I go on to add, everything you were taught was an intentional deception designed to lead you further and further astray from the truth, and people are shamed into conforming. And I give you the little, the little alpha here, guys. In short, you were born into an evil system. You got here before you were born, and it was led you to a trap that you could have never seen coming. Okay? They love pretending to be good while they do their mayhem. It's sick. They're twisted. All right, moving on. So I'm going to make an assumption. If you're sticking with me this far, I would assume that you're aware that what the TV is putting out there as so-called reality is very far from the truth. And basically, they have no regard for the truth. They have regard for programming people into doing what they want. Okay? So if you're reading this, you're probably aware the world is nothing like it's portrayed on TV. However, upon discovering this, you probably tried to warn some of the people you care about. And when you tried to open their eyes, you wonder why, for whatever reason, they can't or won't allow themselves to see it. Have you guys ever had that experience? I have to admit, I've had very little success in red pilling anyone. Anybody I've ever talked to, it's weird, man. They are programmed, brainwashed. Scary. Very scary. All right. So there's a reason they cannot see the truth. Guys, I know why these people, you can't convince them. You can't wake them up for any reason. Like, you could have a picture of George Bush putting a knife through a baby and it wouldn't be enough. Okay. The reason why they cannot see the truth, wait for it. Ready, guys? This is the big reveal. They're tares. What is a tare? It's a weed. They're spiritual weeds. God has sealed their vision. God has sealed their hearing. They have closed their understanding as a punishment for their wickedness. That's why. That's why you can't get through to these people. And you know what's awesome? It's very eloquently laid out in the Bible by Jesus Christ. And, most would agree he had a way with words. So let's take a look. And then I added a little a quote here. I believe this is from 2 Thessalonians. And for this cause, God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. Does that sound like anybody you met in the last year and a half? That they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. This is their punishment, people. Okay? And then you ask yourself, are you a weed or are you a tare? Well, let's find out what that means. I'm interested. Okay, so it's a short parable, but parables are like comparisons and they compare two things. So I want to go through a little bit of the language real quickly. A parable is a comparison that is understood by the children of God. Jesus intentionally coded his language to block the children of Satan from understanding as a punishment for their unrighteousness. Tare is a weed that produces no benefit but looks like wheat. It's also called a darnel. Also, tare can refer to the children of the wicked one. Okay, in this parable, they make reference to the field, that refers to the world. It makes reference to the good seed, that's the children of God. It makes reference to the enemy, that's the devil, the great serpent and dragon, also known as Satan. It talks about the harvest, and here the harvest refers to the end of the world, also known as Armageddon. And the reapers, which refer to God's angels. All right, so just have those in mind. And we're going to go through two versions of the parable. It's not long, I promise, guys. And it's very interesting. It's very informative. And there's two versions of the Bible I like to use together. One is the King James Version. That one is really a beautiful piece of literature. Like, everyone always uses quotes from the King James Bible that you didn't even realize came from the Bible. And, the translators just had a very good way with words. However, it's older English. It's sometimes a little bit more difficult to understand. And so I like to supplement that using the Amplified Bible. And I like the Amplified Classic, but I think both are good. So we're going to go through it first in the Amplified Classic, and then we're going to go through the King James. All right? And I think it's going to be very clear what's going on today. Why are things the way they are? Okay, parable of the wheat and tares as told by Jesus Christ in the Amplified Bible. All right. Another parable he set forth before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. So we're talking about a farmer. But while he was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed also darnel, which is a tare, which is something that looks like wheat, but you can't make bread from it, and it interferes with the whole process. You don't want them. So, but while he was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed also darnel, weeds resembling wheat. So that tells you the children of Satan look just like the children of God. Okay, identical. You can't tell them from the outside. And they put it among the wheat and went on his way. Right. So God put a good seed here on earth. And come behind him Satan, and he sprinkled in his evil seed. You go back and look in the Bible. It starts with Cain, Tubal Cain, right? Old Nimrod. So you got to look all that up. But yeah, there's an evil seed line, and it should be more than obvious to you. Okay, so let's continue. 26. So when the plant sprouted and formed grain, the darnel, or the tare, appeared also with the wheat. And the servants of the owner came to him and said, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? Then how does it have darnel shoots in it, or tares? Excuse me. And he replied to them, An enemy has done this. An enemy. Folks, what is an enemy? When God tells you you have an enemy, you better listen up, dude. This isn't like some sitcom, some movie, some BS. God told you have an enemy. The servant said to him, Then do you want us to go and weed them out? But he said, No, lest in the gathering of the wild wheat, the tares, you root up any of the true wheat along with it. And he says, Let the good seed and the bad seed grow together until the harvest. Remember, harvest is the end of the world. And at the harvest time, I will say to the reapers, my angels, gather the tares first, bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my granary. The granary is heaven. Life everlasting. What's so cool about heaven is not all the amazing gifts we're going to get, is I'm never going to have to see another tear again. That's what I can't wait for. Ugh. All right, guys. Now let's go through it in the King James Version. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while man slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up, that means when the plant started to grow, and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy has done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Okay, folks, so what are the takeaways? We're not all the same. We've been blasted in our head our whole lives that we're all the same, we're all the same. We're not all the same on the inside, folks. There's pure evil in this world. I've come across it. I heard them talking when they didn't know I was listening. I know what they sound like. They sound like a bunch of cackling demons, guys. It's not an exaggeration to say that. These people are possessed. They're infested. They're riddled. And that's why their fruits are so poor. And that's why our very existence, all we have to do is be for them to declare war on us and tell us, that they can't stand the sight of us. Okay, folks, there's a lot of misconceptions about Jesus and Christianity and what he was about and what we're about, what the Bible says. And of course, the devil has gone out of his way to do what he does best, manipulate, distort, and portray Christianity as some sort of a passive thing, which it's totally not. And here's a nice little verse for you. I like to say, no normies in heaven, folks. I mean, if you really want to take the red pill, you're going to be a Christian because that's the whole truth. So choose wisely. Jesus said, don't assume that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I came to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be the members of his household. Do you hear me, Israel? The person who loves father or mother more than me, Jesus, is not worthy of me. The person who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Did you hear that last part, guys? Jesus, first of all, the Father is first. Number two, Jesus. And then everything else can come after that. You love your children. I love my children. You may love your parents or your siblings or whoever, you love. But you certainly can never put them before Jesus and the Father. So that verse can be found in Matthew chapter 10, 34 to 37. Now listen, war has been declared on you. It's irrelevant what you think about it, whether you agree with it, whether you think it makes sense or not, whether you think it's rational, whether you think a person could do that. None of this shit matters, Okay, guys? War has been declared on you and your family and your neighbors and your way of life and your history and your religion and your God. War has been declared on you if you love God, the truth, goodness, and righteousness. That's all you have to qualify to be an enemy of the devil, guys. He's evil. We're all going to die one day, folks. I don't care who you are. But not all of us are going to choose to live forever, and that's a shame. The only reason why you wouldn't make such an obvious choice is if the devil hadn't adulterated you or if you're a tear. Okay? It's a no-brainer. All right, guys. What do we need to do? I have a few tips here. Of course, it's not exhaustive. But on my journey becoming a Christian, here's some good information I could probably share with you. The Bible is amazing, guys. The Bible is amazing. I just gave you a little peek into how much wisdom and knowledge is in there. I mean, it just told you that we're not all alike. There's good and evil, like, boom, from the bloodline, okay? The whole Bible is awesome. The New Testament to me is the best, especially the words of Jesus, guys. I started off with the Gospel of John. I would recommend you do the same. There's a one-to-one pathway to God. No churches or preachers are necessary. I recommend that you pray, and you pray often. Prayer works. It's powerful. So yeah, don't not use that benefit. It says that if you pray and ask, it will be given to you. Okay. Get as much. Listen, I don't know how to say it. War has been declared on you. It's these evil, satanic, whatever you want to call them, versus the people. All right? They're trying to put you in a pen that you can never get out from. All right? Whether you like it or not, war has been declared on you. Let me be the one to tell you now. Get as much food, water, and that means water filtration, especially. Weapons, ammunition. You need a lot of it. Energy. It would be solar, batteries, whatever you figure out for yourself. Medicines and the other supplies that you use. Get as much as you can afford to. I know we're all in different situations. Hex helps a lot, guys. We got to get talking to Hex a little bit because it allows the financial freedom that you can move to the area you need to be in and get the supplies that you need. And it's completely outside of their system. It's unstoppable, uncontrollable. So anyhow, let's move on. I recommend that you move to the country somewhere that you have fresh water. Okay, so if the electricity goes out, you're going to have storable food, you're going to have a fresh water source, and hey, everything else we can work it out. If you find yourself in any, I say communists, they're going under the guise of Democrats these days. If you're anywhere that the leaders of the government are leftists, you need to get out of there now, ASAP. Warn everyone you know, guys. Many will not be able to see it, but if you might, and winning a soul is pretty much the best thing you could ever do. You want to store up treasures in heaven, bring people to Christ. And then after you gave them the warning, I recommend that you don't associate with tares anymore. And I don't care if that's your family, friends, co-workers, and I don't say you have to cut them off completely if you can't. Maybe you can't. I recommend that you minimize contact with them. Because whenever you're yoked with unbelievers, you're at a big disadvantage, and they're going to hate you because they have the spirit of evil in them. So even if you're good to them and don't do anything but treat them well, their envy and their rage and all this wrath they have inside of them will force them to act out against you because they do the will of their Father. Okay? Ask God to send you the spirit of peace, also referred to as the comfort. It's something you can pray for, because I know myself, these are wild times. A lot of crazy things are going on, and I'm amazed that I can stay so calm and peaceful with all this chaos going on around me, all this supposed material world danger that we're facing. When we know there's really, if we die, we're going to heaven. Come on, guys, get your head straight. There's no fear of death here. So get the comforter, ask God for it. Get on your knees when you pray. Go find a quiet place where no one can see you or hear you, because you're going to need it for what's going to be coming up upon earth soon. And I recommend that you seek a fellowship with other believers, because we literally are a spiritual brotherhood and sisterhood. You guys are my family more so than any blood relatives or anything like that. Just based on blood alone, it's not that. It's a spiritual fellowship, a spiritual brotherhood and sisterhood. So that makes you my brothers and sisters, guys. And then I have this proposal I'm calling the Greater Reset. And that is that we immediately stop going along with any of this BS. And we actively take measures to fight against it. Whether that's just sharing information, whether that's showing up in mass, or hey, if they're coming with the Gestapo to take us to the camps, it's go time, boys and girls. The Constitution gives us the green light. These people are the ones that are out in left field. These people are out to lunch. So they want to intimidate you into not defending yourselves? No, absolutely not. Unacceptable. And not only are they not going to get this great reset BS over, I'm demanding 100% accountability. I don't care if you're the local news reporter. I don't care if you're Klaus Schwab. I don't care if you're the stupid Pope. You're going to hang. You're going to hang. You need to hang. We can't let this slide, guys. What's at stake here is that, with this technology that's coming around with the AI and the autonomous war robots that they have, if we don't, and then forget about the smallpox and this other BS that they could probably release if they felt like it. They're a clear and present danger that cannot be afforded. They've already just totally blown any chance that we can overlook this, guys. And we shouldn't overlook it, because we can do truth and reconciliation, and we can have the next 100 to 1,000 years just be like so amazing for humanity. Like, oof, I see it. I have the vision for it. I mean, this place could rock, seriously. But we gotta find our courage. We must demand accountability, okay? We need to stop being cowards. Guys, it's a hard thing to swallow, to call yourself a coward. I was a coward, guys. I was scared. I was afraid of what they could do to me. But you know something? Let me tell you something. What does Jesus say about cowards? Okay, because, being a coward's never been a good thing, but it's not something you figured would end you up in hell. But that's not true. So we go to Revelation chapter 21, verse 8 in the Amplified Bible Classic. And here is Jesus Christ speaking. But as for the cowards and the ignoble and the contemptible and the cravenly lacking in courage and the cowardly submissive, and as for the unbelieving and faithless, and as for the depraved and defiled with abominations, those are all those people killing children in blood ceremony and drinking their bloods. And as for murderers and the lewd and adulterous and the practicers of magic arts, yes, folks, magic arts, you can't do it. Repent. If you didn't know better, you didn't know better. Nice thing about God is He's forgiving. He just says, hey, we all screwed up. Let's get better from starting now. Ask Christ to come into your heart. And it's like, hey, man, we're starting over. All that's forgotten. Doesn't matter how bad it was. And the idolaters, those who give supreme devotion to anyone or anything other than God, like Baal, for example. And all liars, those who knowingly convey untruth by word or deed. All of these shall have their part in the lake that blazes with fire and brimstone. This is the second death, known as the soul death. Cowards are going to the lake of fire along with all of the evil ones. Choose eternity with God and His Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Folks, that is the end of my presentation. I didn't get much time to speak about Hex today, but I'll take a moment to say a few things. So what's the big deal with crypto, Hex, the dollar, all this stuff? Well, I mentioned to you earlier that these satanic families and groups, they have certain control mechanisms. And the most powerful one that they have is somehow they were able to get the ability to print the money for the entire world. And it doesn't take a lot of imagination to realize that when you can print all the money, it's pretty easy to buy all the influence you want. So that's why That's why we need to have competing currencies. We can't have a monopoly on currencies. And what they're calling Federal Reserve notes are actually, it's like a loan. So it's not even money. It's like you're holding a bill. It's something even weirder than that. So the money situation is so critical. Very wise people for many years have been pushing to end the Fed. The Federal Reserve is just the US branch of a world bank that's headed in Switzerland in Basel called the Bank of International Settlements. And so you have the Bank of England, you have the Federal Reserve, the Bank of Japan, there's many banks, all right? But they're all part of the system. And the head of the system is in Switzerland, guys. Okay. And that's why you have the Swiss Guard, who are the protectors of the Pope. All right. So do some math on that one. So yeah, that is their number one weapon. And I would say with that, the number two weapon is the media. Okay. Those are the two most powerful things they have. And now they're trying to use like medical tyranny, as I pointed out. So the situation with the money is critical because what they're going to do soon, probably, eventually, is they stop lending money and then they cause expansion to stop, and then everybody is going to go bankrupt, and then they're going to come in and buy everything up cheap. Just kind of how they did in 2008 to 2010. And then they did it before in 2001, and they did it before that, and before that, before that. So yeah, they're gonna throw the brakes on real hard on us, and they're probably going to try to say that cryptos are illegal and all this other BS. This is their Achilles heel, folks. We need to get out of their money system, and we can't comply. They have no right to print our money. A bunch of jerks in Europe. Okay? We're independent. We're sovereign. We don't need it. And more than that, I think the U.S. Treasury should print a dollar, but no more legal tender, guys. Competing currencies may the best, soundest money win. Okay? And in my opinion, I think Bitcoin is pretty sound. And I think that there's other cryptos, that have a lot of promise. I think Ethereum is opening up a lot of new worlds. But more than that, I'm passionate about Hex because, number one, Hex creates interest. It pays you a yield, I should say. It's actually not interest because it creates its own yield. So what that means is that if you're a Hex holder and you stake it for 10 or more years, you can get 40% added to your principal every year. So if you start with 100, then it's 140, and then you multiply 140 times 40%. And before you know it, you really have a lot more money than you started with. And furthermore, Hex is moving to a proof of stake chain, so it's environmentally friendly. It doesn't promote usury, which is outlawed in the Bible, which we need to get away from. The community of Hexicans, I'm stunned. I'm amazed. I've never, ever, ever seen a collection of people smart, helpful, whatever. It's just the type. So I'm very proud to be a Hexican, and I recommend that everyone looks into it because financial freedom is an important step along the way to your overall freedom. So anyways, that's the end of my first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it and look forward to any feedback you may want to provide to me. And I'm not expecting everyone to agree with everything I said, guys. No one has a monopoly on the truth, but I'm somebody who spent a lot of time thinking about these issues, looking into it, and this is the message I wanted to bring to you today. So I want to thank you for joining me in my first episode. This is Florida Man 78, and I'm wishing you guys a wonderful day, wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is when you get this. And I'm asking you, go all in on Jesus, guys, because you have been brainwashed to be afraid of that name and be afraid of his power. But he loves you, and he's willing to reach out a hand to you anytime you're willing to accept that. So praise all of you in Jesus' name, and we will talk soon, folks. Bye.